Hey, what's up, guys? And welcome back to the Center Ice Podcast, where today we'll be talking about the upcoming NHL draft. Obviously, the 2022 NHL draft, and let's get right into it. So, starting off, we'll just be doing the first 16 picks today, which are obviously the lottery picks. And we'll start off with number 1, the Montreal Canadiens. And what a run it's been for the Canadiens. The last about year and a half, made it to the Cup final. Next year, get the first overall pick. It's a good little bit for Canadiens fans recently. And starting off with them, I think not going to look too much into it. The Montreal Canadiens are going to draft Shane Wright. First overall, he's been the consensus number 1 for the last 3 years. Exceptional status in the OHL. Obviously, he had that great first season where he outperformed Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid's first season in the OHL, that is. And then, obviously, there's been a few concerns this season, but many NHL scouts tend to be chalking it up to the COVID year and getting Shane Wright out of the groove. I think there's a lot of players like that this season, and he just happens to be one of them. But he's still showing flashes that he can be a superstar at the NHL level, and he had 96 points in 56 games last year, which is obviously. It's not necessarily elite for a first overall pick, but he showed flashes when in his defensive game. He said a few times that he's modeling his game after Patrice Bergeron, and Shane Wright just is the perfect piece for Montreal to add now. That number 1 center that they've been looking for the last few years. Shows a lot of flashes of John Tavares. A little bit of finishing in tight to the net, not as flashy of a player, obviously, but there's not too much to say about Shane Wright here. He's just the consensus number 1. So we'll get into it and continue on to the New Jersey Devils. And the Devils are in an interesting situation because they could take Logan Cooley, who is the best player available for sure, but with Hughes and Hischier already their top 2 centers, and not a lot of open spots for new centermen on the squad. I believe that they're going to go ahead and take Juraj Slafkovsky. And he's definitely an interesting player. He had 10 points in 31 games this season. He's looking more like a Matthew Tkachuk, Josh Anderson type of player, and a little bit less flashy, but he'll fit in nicely on a line with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt as more of a physical force. Obviously, playing in Liga last year, he's used to playing against grown men, which is always helpful going in the NHL. It makes the transition easier, and it's definitely going to be a good look. Some of his most impressive accolades are he won at the Olympic MVP. He won the Olympics and he was the MVP of his team, which just shows that he can compete against all these guys who are pushing for NHL spots. All the grown men that are in the Olympics, he's playing with the best of them there, and he's just a good look. Not too much to look into. Fills a need the Devils have, and it's going to be a good one. Moving on to the Arizona Coyotes. I think they're going to start out their rebuild. It's going to be just the starting piece for them. They're going to take Logan Cooley, best player available, second best player in the draft, had 111 points in 75 games with the U.S. National Development Team. He's known as a great two-way forward, elite playmaking ability, great in his own zone, has had a very similar stat line to Trevor Zegras in his draft year, and we saw how that turned out. Zegras, one of the most exciting players in the league these days, so it's definitely going to be exciting to see what Cooley turns into. Player comparison, he's a similar skill set to Jack Hughes. It's not a right-on skill set, but definitely he possesses some of the qualities that Jack Hughes has and how he plays and just the speed, edge work, and playmaking ability in the offensive zone. A little bit more two-way than Jack Hughes. Not really as impressive of a prospect, but he's definitely got more two-way talent there, and so that's going to be a good starting point for the Arizona Coyotes. Moving on to pick number 4, and I believe the Seattle Kraken are going to go ahead and they're going to pick Simon Nemec. So the Seattle Kraken last year, they obviously took a bit more of a traditional route in terms of expansion teams. They are starting off right away in a rebuild, as most expansion teams do. Obviously, Vegas being the exception, but happens that Vegas was right before them, so it's in the top of everyone's mind. But they got Matty Beniers last season. He's looking good, and I think they're gonna try and pick up a good defenseman in Simon Nemec this season, in which they don't really have a good defenseman yet. He was pretty impressive last season. He had 26 points in 39 games in the Slovakia Pro League, which is a somewhat lower level pro league, but just the fact that he's playing against grown men again is very helpful. It makes the transition easier to the NHL. Might need a year in the AHL first to get used to the smaller ice surfaces in North America, but he looks good. He's great two-way. He's got a real offensive knack from the blue line. He's looking a lot like Roman Josi, and it's just gonna be a slam dunk pick for the Seattle Kraken. Moving on, real simple pick for the Philadelphia Flyers. They're gonna go ahead and take Matthew Savoy, one of the most impressive players in this draft. Start of the season, he was ranked top 3. He's still ranked as high as 2 by a lot of people. But he's a very impressive prospect. He's dynamic playmaker, on the smaller side of things, but he can make up for it with his elite edge work and just the speed and skill he brings to the game. He's also a dual threat. He can play center or wing, which is going to really help in the Philadelphia Flyers organization. They got a lot of good centers, so it's going to be important that he can kind of be more versatile and play on the wing. Maybe with Logan Couture, he'd be a good piece. Definitely something that the Flyers don't have now that they got rid of Claude Giroux. He'll be a lot like Giroux, but the player that he's probably most like is Matthew Barzal. There are some worries in his game, though, for sure. A lot of people are worried he's too power play reliant, which is, it's a little bit of a concern, but it can also be a tool at the next level. Power play is a big part in the NHL. And, it's just a simple slam dunk pick for the Philadelphia Flyers. Moving forward, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Columbus is in a little bit of an awkward situation. But I think they're going to go ahead and take defenseman out of the Czech League, David Jiricek. And he can... they're just adding to their excellent decor at this point. Obviously, they're setting themselves up. They're going to have one of the best decors in the league with Zach Werenski, Jake Bean, Adam Boqvist. Got a lot of good young players, and I think they're going to add David Jiricek to that group, and he's just the best player at that pick to take, and And, good defenseman, don't come around often, and he has that upside to be a good defenseman. Had 11 points in 29 games in the Czech league, probably one of the top 6 or 7 leagues in the world. It was a pro league again. A lot of pro players in this draft out of Europe, and he's looking to be a good two-way defenseman at the next level, and it's just a easy pick to be made for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Moving forward, a pretty interesting one. The Ottawa Senators have picked number 7, and I think they're going to go ahead and they're going to pick out of the Finnish league. They're going to pick Joakim Kemell. He's definitely something the Ottawa Senators don't really have just an elite pure goal scorer. Obviously, Ottawa is already set up really well with defensemen. They got Shabbat, they got Brandstrom, got a lot of prospects coming up, Jake Sanderson. And then obviously they have great playmaker, probably future face of the franchise, Tim Stützle. And now they can add someone to dish the puck to here with Joakim Kemell. Great potential with that line of Brady, Tkachuk, Stützle, and Kemell. Definitely got exactly what you want. Power forward, playmaker, sniper. Great line build. He had 25 points last year in 39 games in Liga. Playing in a really good league. He was really impressive. He started off the season really hot. Had a little bit of a dry spell there in the back half, or he'd probably be a little bit higher in this draft, but still a very impressive season from Kemell here, and he's showing a little bit of Patrick Laine comparisons. He's got a little bit more size to him. Obviously, just a pure shooter. Just easy pick for Ottawa. He's exactly what they need. I think he's going to fall right to them. Moving on, the Detroit Red Wings, and I think Stevie Yzerman, he picks a lot of steals in the draft, and I think there's one very interesting player, and that's going to be Brad Lambert. And he's been a very polarizing player this season. He started the season at number 2, was looking really good prior to the season. Obviously had a little bit of a tough start to the season. But it can kind of be explained away. He didn't have very good relationship with management with his first team. He got traded halfway through the season, started to pick it up a little bit, gained some confidence, but he's definitely a very polarizing player. He's ranked anywhere from 4 to in the second round even. So he's going to be a very interesting player, and I think Steve Yzerman is the exact kind of guy to pick Brad Lambert here. He's definitely going to be an interesting one. He had 10 points in 49 Liga games, which is it's not exactly it's interesting. So he didn't obviously put up the best stat line, but he showed flashes of what he can do, and he has obviously a lot of transferable skills to the NHL level. Fits into the Detroit system really well. He can play nice second line center behind Larkin. Hopefully moves into the first line center, maybe ahead of Larkin at some point in his career. It's just going to be an interesting pick, and I think Steve Yzerman's going to go ahead and take him. Moving on to pick number 9 and the Buffalo Sabres. Definitely figured it out a little bit more last season. They're not. They're doing a lot better than they have been in the past, and I think they're starting the rebuild right. And I think they're going to pick Swedish winger Jonathan Lekkerimäki with the 9th overall pick. So he had 35 points in 26 games over in Sweden for juniors. He got called up for 26 SHL games in which he had 9 points. Very impressive stat line for such a young guy, and the SHL, probably the third best professional league in the world. He looks to be a great goal scorer, fit in. Obviously, Buffalo already has great defensemen. They got Rasmus Dahlin, Powers coming up. Looked really good in college last season. And I think it's just a perfect pick. They need some more goal scoring up front, and that's exactly what Lekkerimaki can add. Give Tage Thompson somebody to play with. Peyton Krebs is on the come up. Add to that growing forward core, and it's gonna be a good look to see where Jonathan Lekkerimaki fits in here. So moving on to pick number 10, the Anaheim Ducks. And I think they're going to go ahead and select Connor Geekie. He's going to be a really impressive power forward out of the WHL. He actually played with Matthew Savoy this season, and they were one of the best teams in all of the CHL. He's a great power forward. He does it all. He can score goals. He can make plays. He's great in his own end. He's a big guy. He's about 6'3". He's a really impressive player. He's one of those guys that you look at. He's just an athletic player that don't come around often. He's a real Ryan Getzlaf type, which is perfect for the Anaheim Ducks after he just retired. Hopefully Connor Geekie steps in, fills his role. He could just do whatever. He's a really good fit for the Anaheim Ducks here. Young skill team, add a bigger guy to kind of play with them. It's gonna be interesting to see what he does. Moving on now to the San Jose Sharks, and they're definitely in an interesting position. They're just really entering the rebuild. Still got a lot of their older guys on contract. A lot of them kind of not playing as well as they used to, so they could really pick anything, but I think they're going to go ahead and pick Pavelski Mitikov, and he's just going to be a pretty solid defenseman out of the OHL. 62 points in 67 games, obviously a pretty good stat line for a young guy, especially a defenseman in the OHL. Those kind of guys don't come around too often. And San Jose, they got obviously Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns. All are kind of on their way out. They're definitely older. Their play has gone downhill a little bit. I think this guy would be a great guy to bring in to learn from Karlsson and Burns. Maybe play with them a little bit on the back ends of their career. And it's just a slam dunk pick. I think this will be a good fit for the San Jose organization. He is Russian, which brings in a little bit of worries with how the NHL shut down. The Russians aren't allowed to come to the NHL last year at the end. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that going forward. But he's going to be he could be a really good fit for the San Jose organization. Potentially a top two D-pair kind of player. Moving forward, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I think they're going to be, with their second pick that they acquired from Chicago in the Jones deal, it keeps on getting better, that deal. They're going to go ahead and select Frank Nazar, who's he's just super talented. He's all skill kind of player. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but he can just do it all. He's got great shot, great hands. He's fast. He's going to be an exciting prospect. Potentially get him on a line with Patrick Laine. Get a little bit more offense up front for the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're a little bit lacking here. So it'll definitely be an interesting pick. He had 105 points in 80 games for the national development team in the U.S. He plays a lot like Patrick Kane, which, it's just going to be really helpful. Hopefully, he'll be setting up Patrick Laine in the coming years, and it's just a really good looking pick for the Columbus Blue Jackets here with their second in the first round. Next, number 13, the New York Islanders. And the Islanders really just entered the rebuild. They just got rid of Barry Trotz, possibly the best coach in the league. They're really just going full rebuild here, trying to build around Matthew Barzal. And I think the first thing that they're going to do for that is they're going to acquire Russian forward Danil Yurov. And he had 36 points in 28 games in the MHL, which is the Russian Junior League, for those of you who don't know. He actually played 21 games in the KHL, didn't have any points, but that's to be expected of such a young guy who, the KHL is the closest thing to the NHL you're going to get. Probably didn't have a lot of play time up there, but he still got to a little taste of the level. He's going to be a little bit more mature than most prospects here. He's a real two-way forward. Which Louis Lamoriello, if you know Lamoriello, the Islanders coach, he loves his two-way guys. There's again a little bit concerned because he's from Russia, so there's a little bit concern of what the NHL's policy will be for players coming out of Russia in the coming seasons, but just that gives more potential for steals from Russia, obviously. He plays a lot like Mark Stone. Obviously, the skating is not quite there, but he's a great two-way forward. He's going to be a good fit with Matthew Barzal, and it's just going to hopefully works out. We'll see. Next up, with the 14th overall pick, we're going to go to the Winnipeg Jets, and I have them taking Denton Mateychuk out of the WHL. He's definitely an impressive prospect. Obviously, Winnipeg is a very, very quality team with exception of their defense, so they're going to really hope he pans out. They got great forwards, one of the best goalies in the league, and hopefully Mateychuk can be the missing defensive piece they need to make a cup run here. He had 64 points in 65 games last season. In the WHL, he was really impressive. He's a great two-way defenseman, harder on the offensive side. He's actually he's from Winnipeg, so get the hometown guy. Always a great guy to market around. He looks good going in this next season, so we'll keep an eye on him going forward, and hopefully that'll be a good pick for Winnipeg. And coming in at pick number 15 are the Vancouver Canucks. They're in a pretty interesting position. They got a lot of young guys. They're talking about trading up in the draft. Actually, there's a lot of rumors that they're gonna move JT Miller and move up to the Devils, number 2 overall pick, which just keep an eye out for. They're hoping to make a splash. They're in a weird position right now with they got some older guys and some younger guys. They got to pick whether they're going for it now or not, and I think they're picking the rebuild here for the next few years, 1 or 2 years at least. But they're going to go ahead and pick, I believe, Cutter Gauthier, and he's coming out of the national development team out of the U.S. Pretty impressive stat line. He has 93 points in 77 games for them. He's a little bit all over the map here too. A lot of people rank him in the top 10 all the way up to pick number 6, but he's also ranked as low as pick 22, so he's definitely going to be an interesting one. He's a Swiss Army knife a little bit here. He can play center or wing. He moved around between the two last season a little bit. He's He's a pretty big player at 6'3", 194 pounds. So he's definitely he's more mature, and he's probably closer to being in the NHL than a lot. But for now, next season, he's going to Boston College. Obviously, got a great track record. They moved Johnny Gaudreau into the league. They have a lot of guys. Great college. Hoping to develop him next season. He's really a Mikko Rantanen type, and they're hoping he can slide in there with either playing with Elias Pettersson or playing second line center for him. Have a good 1-2 punch. It's always an important thing on championship teams, and he looks good. Probably a good pick for the Vancouver Canucks. So now moving on to the final pick, and the Buffalo Sabres' second pick in the first round. And they already acquired a high-level scoring forward with Jonathan Lekkerimäki earlier, I believe. And now I think they're going to go ahead and go on defense and pick Kevin Korchinski. And he's a pretty impressive offensive defenseman. He put up 65 points in 67 games last year in the WHL, which is, if you're ever in a point a game in one of the CHL leagues, always a very impressive feat at that age. Definitely someone to look out for. High upside. He's going to be... he's looking pretty good going in the draft. It's kind of tough to judge where he'll go. He's another one of those polarizing players. He's all over the map, ranked as high as 10, all the way down to the second round. He's very interesting, but I think the Buffalo Sabres are they're going to go ahead and shoot their shot on him, see what happens. He looks to be a good defenseman. He's got a lot of high upside on the offensive side, at least. He doesn't have too many holes in his game in the defensive side, and he's definitely a good-looking guy for the Buffalo Sabres to get potential steal at number 16. So we'll see how that goes. All right, that's all the lottery picks right now. And thanks for tuning in to the Center Ice podcast, and we hope you come back.